Okay, so here we are, live with Nick for the mentor chat. Nick, I gotta tell you, I can't express how much we truly appreciate you taking your time and imparting your wisdom to us new guys. And yeah, so let's do a little bit about you. So you are an author and a very prolific treasure hunter. Um, so you tell us about your project that you just wrapped up, I guess, with Lisa Finch.
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Nick. I'm one of the authors of Apocrypha, which just wrapped up late last year. Um, we got into that project. First, I'd say kind of how I met Lisa. I met Lisa through the secret community, kind of
Mhm.
loosely, you know. We knew who each other were. We chatted here and there, but it wasn't really until she put on her hunt, which was Letters of Saint Germain, which was kind of like a secret style hunt with a little bit of a twist at the end with like an acrostic and stuff. But my team ended up winning that hunt. So it just so happened, and I had no idea that Lisa lived in the city that was very close to where I worked. So
Oh,
I've been in the fire department for 16 years now. So I was at my fire station and I linked up. I'm like, hey, why don't you come to the fire station? You can deliver the prize. I'll give you a tour. You can meet the crazy people I work with,
yeah.
and uh, and that's it. So she came and she delivered me the prize, and we hit it off right away. So we talked more afterwards, um, and we decided that I told her, I'm like, I always kind of wanted to write like a book, you know, and I had an idea that was kind of preliminarily um, made in a way. I was talking about it much earlier with Rob Jenner.
Yeah.
And Rob was he started getting busy with the podcast and stuff like that. So it got really kind of backburnered. So with Lisa, I was like, hey, I got this idea. What do you think of this idea? And she's like, this is great. So at that time, I think what happened was me, Rob, Lisa, and a few others, we ended up solving the Bossel treasure, which was uh, a treasure hunt in the United Kingdom that was probably in the ground. It was buried for like 10 years.
Wow.
And we finally figured that out. And that was probably kind of on the tail end of quite a few wins
It,
after, yeah, because we had quite a few wins after that. So that was probably somewhere well over a dozen treasure hunt wins and stuff like that. So speaking to that and kind of talking about that with Lisa getting into the book, I'm like, hey, I'm like, this concept is very ancient alien in a way, but I also kind of wanted to impart things I kind of learned about myself going through the hobby, um,
nice.
and seeing how easily like, you can throw your life out of balance if you kind
Yeah.
of go into something so hard.
Right.
Um, and I think what happened with me is even though there was a lot of wins, it did come at the expense of like time with family and time
Oh,
where it's like it became like difficult to communicate with me even face to face. And then so I was kind of taking that out of balance and almost greed to the point like I always want to win more and more and more treasure hunts, and it's
yeah.
just so we got into I got into this thought process. I'm just like, all right, well, what drives a person to constantly be in this dominant state of mind?
Hmm.
So that was something that we kind of painted into the storyline of Apocrypha, which is technically true with humanity historically. Is that yeah, a lot of wars and a lot of borders, a lot of history has to do with man's inability to kind of coexist with each other and
Yeah.
rather dominate each other. So that was kind of the storyline that we chose with Apocrypha. So we wanted it to be fiction, but also have suggestively nonfiction notes in there, uh, mostly because you know, we put a lot of historical facts in there, and that kind of helped it be a little more nonfictive. But we always wanted it to be a suggestive thing
Yeah.
to kind of have that message. It's just like, you know, you got to think for yourself. You know, you're a very small
Nice.
existence in a very big universe. just because some guy told you this is the way things are. Always remember your small existence, and that kind of humbles somebody.
Yeah,
So, and I think when you humble somebody, it makes it a lot easier for them to coexist with other people. Does that make
absolutely.
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 So that's kind of where we're at with Apocrypha, and it was a successful hunt. I took on some heavy art
Yeah.
responsibility on it. If you saw what I was before we started Apocrypha, you would never believe that was it. I mean, obviously, I had help. I had a friend of mine that kind of reached out, and I kind of put together the rough full color images and stuff like that, and he
Yeah.
was kind of able to tweak it and kind of make it more retro. But in turn, I learned that style, and now I'm
Yeah.
kind of just doing it by myself, and it's so much
Nice.
easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, the leaps and bounds that I made with that were awesome. And then obviously Lisa, just having her as a partner, she writes the story so
Yeah.
well. She puts you right there in the room, and she can make you feel like you're there. And that's a huge advantage to have in this hobby, because, and this is something that I talked about with Rob Jenner a lot, and we both feel this way, is just like we feel there's always a miss on the story with a lot of treasure hunts. So that was important to us. We wanted it to be able to be looked at long after it was solved,
Yeah.
at the very least, for a story that can still be read and something to be learned from, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was Apocrypha. I did not rehearse any of that. That was like right from my hip there. So, yeah.
It's a huge success. And I mean, I already know the answer to this, but are you guys going to collaborate in the future on anything else?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we are in the process of working on a sequel, I guess you would call it, for Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Um, and in that, there are some goals and there's a lot of things that we learned from
Hmm.
Apocrypha going into the next project. One
Yeah.
is cost. To make a book like Apocrypha, and and a lot of this had to do with me. I was one that was a little more champagne taste on going into Apocrypha, because I didn't plan on doing something else. People have bothered me for years to, you got to make a treasure hunt, you got to make a treasure hunt. And I always said, I'm like, yeah, you'll know when I make one, because I want it to look like really
Yeah.
good, because I like the old school ones like Masquerade and Secret, where the art is just home run art.
Yeah.
But with that comes a lot of cost. Mostly just in the stuff I had to invest in to get the art supplies, uh, the printing cost with Amazon.
Yeah.
Apocrypha cost like almost $13 just to print it. And that's before we even had to deal with the royalty fee with Amazon, which is like a 70-30 split. So we had to, make the cost a little higher than what people are used to paying for a treasure hunt. Not crazy high, but
No, I think everyone was
um,
super excited.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so moving into the sequel, that's goal number one, is we wanted to make it more affordable. So that
Oh.
Lisa's like, "Hey, do you think you could work in black and white?" I'm like, "Sure," you know what I mean. So
Nice.
that's definitely one of the changes that we'd make. And but another big part of it too is that I think a big goal for Lisa is that we want to try and get published by a publisher.
Yeah.
So in doing so, and that's something we try to do with Apocrypha before we went through Amazon. But what we've learned, and I'm not surprised that we've learned this, is that it's very difficult to sell an idea to a publisher when they already know, sales data wise, that once a treasure hunt is over, the sales of the book like really take a nosedive.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of one of the cons of the hobby, right? So
Sure.
especially from the writer's standpoint. So in order to be productive on the second one, and to kind of attract it, because this is kind of a goal of Lisa's that I want to meet for us as a
Absolutely.
partnership. We're going to probably have to write something just as cool, that's cheaper, that's more fun. And if we're putting our money where our mouth is with our message, is that we want people to work together. We don't want people to be so towards each other.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest way to do that is to kind of take like this one prize out of it and make it kind of more like they're all solving for the same thing, like an ending or a mystery to be solved in the book.
Yeah.
But I think putting it all out there for them to control the difficulty level is the best way for people to work together, and it's the best way for people to kind of go about their life in a balanced way.
Yeah.
So I learned this a lot through doing a lot of escape room books, and talking with guys that are really successful escape room in a book
Yeah.
authors, like, the Daily Depths,
Yeah.
which was kind of like a tribute off of Maze, which was, so I don't think I'm the first guy that's came to this realization. You know what I mean? Maze was an awesome book and it had a $10,000 prize, but the Daily Depths was kind of like a tribute to that, which is pretty
Yeah.
much you got to get through this maze and then there's like an underlying puzzle that you have to solve and stuff like that. But when you go through the Daily Depths forum, it is just full of people that are just, yeah, I got this, I got that. And so we like that. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like the lane that we're in right now with the sequel.
That's amazing. That's going to be
Yeah.
really great. Yeah, I know I can speak for everybody, and we are on the edge of our seats waiting for that to come out.
Oh, wow.
So what did you think of the idea of the mentors workshop? Just like when I approached you, like the idea of it and the process, what did you think about it?
I thought it was a great idea. Writing puzzles is not easy. It's not easy. It's not something that you can just pick up and do. I think it's really a courageous thing for somebody to try it though without any experience and stuff. But just having people that have kind of been through the ringer, and for the people that are in the workshop, like me, Rob, George, you're in there. It's good to have people that have been on both sides of the coin,
Yeah.
by seeing it from a hunter side and seeing it from a writer's side, and just having the ability to have that resource
Yeah.
available to somebody, and it's no cost to them and it's no cost
Right.
in time to me. I like helping people out. That's kind of where that's the stage that I'm in with it. It's good to kind of just give them a little constructive criticism, and not only that, just like behind the scenes, it's like, hey, what's your goals with the puzzle? Like, are you
Yeah.
trying? Is there a theme you want people to kind of latch onto? Is this kind of just more whatever? Do you want it to be cipher heavy? Do you want them
Yeah.
to have it to be so cipher heavy that they're just sitting on in front of a screen all day, or do you want it to be cipher heavy to the point where they have to kind of break it old school on pencil and paper, and
Yeah.
then the coders won't have it? Because I think we have the experience in the group to kind of point them in the directions that they want.
Yeah.
I think between the four of us, we've seen quite a bit different bit of styles. So
Yeah.
it's advantageous to anybody that's new, and then they come in, they get their reps in. They might make a couple of puzzles that are just like but you get better every single time you do it.
Yeah.
So it's a good place for people to kind of get in there and just kind of spar it out, get the kinks
Yeah.
out. And then when they feel like they're good, then go do something even bigger and better than that. So I think it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal of mind games, is just being a place for, like you said, you can, and it's for people that just enjoy making puzzles just for fun as much as it's for like there's a handful of folks that really want to get some experience and to practice and to maybe go on to do bigger projects. But something that came up on both sides of the table was brought up by both the members who submitted puzzles and by the mentors, was guessing. Um, some of the people that submitted the puzzle said that they were surprised at the number of guesses, I guess you could say, that it took to get to the solution. And so, in your opinion, like from a puzzle standpoint, what's the difference between guessing and solving? And you mentioned a read my mind puzzle. So, could you kind of touch on those?
Okay, so those are two different questions. And make sure you make sure I answer them both. Okay,
Okay.
because I might go on a tangent with the first one. So you're kind of talking about guesses. So my opinion, when like I said, it really just depends on the person's status from the writer's standpoint. I would probably equate the guessing to how much time do you have to manage people's guesses. That's first and foremost.
Mhm.
Are you able to sit in front of your phone all day and just answer emails and
Mhm.
just look at guesses? And once you start seeing a lot of those guesses are way off, you start to wonder, like, how many of these people are actually putting in the work? So I think the difference between a guess and a solution is work put in. Obviously, from the writer standpoint, they're going to be like, well, it's difficult to see how people come to, everybody thinks so differently, right? How they come
Yeah.
to that conclusion. But there is a difference between a guess and a solution, is that a solution has somebody that's put quite a bit of time into it, and it seems methodical, where a guess seems more spaghetti at the wall. 5 minutes later, spaghetti at
Yeah.
the wall. I want to win. I want to win. I want to win.
Mhm.
And it's like pulling a slot machine in a casino almost, right? It's
Mhm.
that much effort, but you don't have really any control over whether or not you're right. It's a big reason why I try to shy away from decoders, because that's kind of the habit people get into, is with the brute forcing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difference, I would say, between a guess and a solve. And we all have done it. I've guessed and I've solved. On the writer's side, the one thing that me and Lisa had a conversation about, and we come to the agreement with Apocrypha, was that we constructed the puzzle where you had to show X, A,
Yeah.
B, C, X, Y, Z before you even got a response from us.
Nice.
And it just so happened that, at the same time, like 3 or 4 teams kind of got to that spot at once. And,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
a couple of teams just, they got there, and I've been there, you know what I mean? When you put in an answer and your heart, your soul, and your time is
Yeah.
behind it, and you're not getting an answer, and then they're just like, well, what if it, how do I know that this even made it to you, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, they start saying stuff like that, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, I got it, don't worry about it, man, you're close. But again, it's just, I'm very, this hobby crumbles the second you deviate from the rule set that you set for it from the beginning. If you deviate, then it just turns into just murky
Pray
water.
for me. Okay.
So you feel terrible for people, but
Yeah.
I've been there, and trust me, dude, I got plenty of cuts and scars to show for being at the finish line, and not making it. One of those is the hidden sun. Not just me and Rob. I think another secret guy. I think like Chris Preacher. I think his team
Oh,
was.
yeah?
Oh my God, he was. I think he was a little closer than we were. It was just
Yeah.
like this little word on a holy well in the UK, and I swear, if you didn't find like the most high def picture of that holy well, you
Yeah.
would have never been able to see the word, because it was like
Wow.
hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
But we were there, and that's good enough for me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he was there too, and got nothing to be ashamed of to get that far. So I think that's really what it comes down to with guesses versus solves. It comes down to the author, how much they're willing to manage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You want to let people throw spaghetti at the wall? That's fine. You know what I mean? It's on you. Or, you put a rule set in there where it's like you can guess once a day or twice
Yeah.
a day, or, it's up to them. Now, your other question, and
Yes.
like I said, I already went on a tangent, so now you got to ask me the other question.
Yeah.
So,
You had mentioned a phrase that I hadn't heard before, but as soon as you mentioned it, like it made so much sense. I was like, I know exactly what kind of puzzle he's talking about. But it's like you said, a read my mind puzzle.
yeah. Yeah. So, a read my mind puzzle, I think the way I kind of look at a read my mind puzzle, it just seems like you don't ever really have a set, um like, pieces. You don't have pieces that are to work with, right?
Yeah.
It could just be stories and images and stuff like that. Like, one of the puzzles that I'm currently going through right now, it's been unsolved for 20 years, and those are kind of the ones I like to go after, because
Yeah.
I already know the rat race is over,
Yeah.
and it's more of a marathon, and it's just more constructive with my life right now. The puzzle is called the Oracle.
Yeah.
And I've met the author of the Oracle on my 40th birthday in London.
Nice.
And I love working on his puzzle, but he said he chose a symbolic approach, okay, to the solution. There is no written explanation. There is no sentence like Masquerade.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you have to decode. You have
Wow.
to look at pictures and decide what they mean. Or in those pictures, something is not true. Um, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to get sucked into for a lot of time. So that's kind of a good example of it. Not to say that it's a bad puzzle.
Right.
Because if it does get solved, then I could be like, oh my god, I cannot believe that. And that's something that he kind of said, when someone solves it, they'll get it. But that's kind of the vibe I'm thinking about, like taking something like a symbolic approach, because when you use the word symbolic approach without any puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
one person's upbringing to the next person's
Right.
upbringing is going to dictate what is symbolic to them.
Yeah.
So that's when it becomes, guess what I'm thinking, because it's
Yeah.
symbolic to me,
Yeah.
right? But it might
Right.
not be symbolic to you, which means a lot of people will it'll go right over their head. So that's probably the example that would make the best example, is that hunt. But
Right.
I love the author. He's a really cool dude, and I hope it gets solved one day before either he's dead, or right after that before I'm dead. So
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense. We did have we had a question
yeah.
from the from the viewers here.
Mhm. People watch this.
Yeah,
Cool.
we got 9. So, do you prefer the Morse era of Black Flag or the Henry Rollins era?
um. Okay, so I know what they're referring to. They're referring to my shirt.
Yeah.
I saw this shirt. This right here is, and this is my wife, because this is what she does. My wife knows, she has a job that she knows why the internet chases people through the internet and advertises stuff to them. So through time, my
Yeah.
phone has figured out that I love punk rock. I love horror movies. I love um, Henry Rollins a lot. And the reason I love Henry Rollins a lot, because my whole life people have been telling me that I'm the doppelganger of Henry Rollins. Like I look just like him. And I
Yeah.
see it. I'm not exactly like him. I'm built like him. I've actually met him. I've gone to a Rollins band concert.
Nice.
But I also like, horror movies, suspense movies and stuff like that. So some shirt company um decided that there must be a guy like me that loves the movie The Witch and loves
Oh,
Black Flag. So that's Black Phillip, who's, the goat in the movie The Witch, that starts
nice.
talking to people at the end. And I'm like, I got to get that shirt. And I got hooked and I spent my money and here I am. But to answer their question, Rollins era, right? All the
Nice.
way, all the way. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very
Good
cool.
question.
And you mentioned while we were working in the mentor project, you said you feel one of the most important things a puzzle maker can do is study, solve puzzles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I can't go in there right now because she's also on Zoom calls with work. But I have a massive bookshelf of just hunts, and a lot of them they were far over before I even got to them. But some of them you don't have to buy the book, and you
Yeah.
could just read the solution. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And the cool part about it is usually a lot of these books are much cheaper once they're already solved, like maybe
Yeah.
a few years down the road and stuff like that. Which kind of reminds me, we got to do that with Apocrypha. Still charging
That's funny.
full price for it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hypocrite. Yeah, and it just helps, it helps. The more it's like being a fighter, the more you
Yeah.
see different styles coming at you, the more you're going to be able to counterpunch them quicker. So
Right.
it's just you're prepared, and that's in all avenues of treasure hunting, whether it be deciphering imagery, deciphering clues in a riddle, Caesar shifts, Polybius squares, hill ciphers, you name it. I think it's super important to see all the aspects of it, and not only just the aspects of it in general, just see them put to work.
Yeah.
To see how evil a writer could be to
Yeah, right.
somebody.
For sure, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I love studying solve puzzles, and it's yeah. I feel like do you okay, so how let's see how to phrase this question. It's different. It's different from working a clue forward and coming up with the answer. It's a different mind process to see the answer and then compare it to the clue. So, but how much overlap do you feel like? Because I feel like you're right. You can absolutely learn a whole lot. you can still learn a whole lot, having never worked on that hunt before it was solved, and then looking and studying the solution. What am I trying to say? It's like the overlap between the two. I'm trying to ask how, like, do you feel like you can still look back and go, I would have solved that, or I would have caught on to that? I would have, or like, I would have never caught that. Like, yeah, like, not in a million
Yeah.
years would I put those two
Oh
together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think here's what I'll say
Okay.
to kind of really broad brush that. If someone looks back at every solved puzzle and said, I would have solved that, they're
Yeah.
lying. They have an ego problem. And I don't know, they're on drugs. One of those three or all three together.
Yeah.
I can tell you 100% that I've lost more treasure hunts than I've won. Um, Without a doubt. Like if you probably put it on like a win-loss scale, I'd look like Glass Joe from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. And I think everybody does, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot, it's a lottery thing. I think um yeah, and some of them I'm just like I don't think it's like I would have solved that and I wouldn't have solved that because it's very difficult to see that you can't really answer that question
Yeah.
because I would have had to have been alive in the time period of that. I would have had to have had the
True.
resources available at that time. I would have had to have an upbringing at that time. If it was in the 70s, I wasn't even born yet. You
Yeah.
know, um, it's a difficult question to answer. Um, I don't even know if you should answer that question, to be honest with you. I will say that the advantage is just learning the methods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Learning the methods, absorbing the methods, and be on the lookout for it because
Yeah.
every one of us is inspired by something from the past
Right.
in terms of treasure hunts. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Um, and I think that's kind of just plays forth like with Apocrypha. I mean, Rob asked me this question. He's just like, um, is there any kind of like nods to treasure hunts in Apocrypha? I'm like, oh my God, dude, can you? Yeah, absolutely. For one, I used a triangular number sequence, right? Which I use, and I just kind of use the first 26 numbers. So I can use it as an AZ or A1Z26 cipher, but instead of using 1 through 26, I use the first 26 numbers of the triangular number sequence. And that gave
Okay.
you an alphabet. I'll
Nice.
get to the alphabet in a minute, but the reason I use a sequence of numbers is one, because I'm a big Tool fan, okay, the band, and I learned about the Fibonacci sequence from Tool. Tool wrote a song with the drummer because the drummer's insanely good. He actually had a drum beat that was just like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 5,
Nice.
8, and he
Yeah.
was just doing it. I'm like,
Insane.
holy cow, man, this guy's nuts. And I'm like, these guys are really good at math. And then and then I found the Beacon Star, which is Randy Pishel, which is super cipher heavy hunt.
Yeah.
Um, he used the Fibonacci sequence. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like that guy knew that. And then being that we used a prize that was kind of a pyramid shaped,
Yeah.
quasi alien artifact thing, I'm just like, it would be cool that number sequence is kind of ingrained into the
Nice.
puzzle. So there was the Beacon Star, obviously Masquerade with having like a border phrase in there, some type of border phrase. I always wanted to use the stars somehow
Yeah.
to kind of get something. So I did put an image in there that was where they're kind of looking out in a telescope and kind of made that kind of like a general master puzzle clue and put a TV that kind of had the same colors that these symbols had in the border. So they can kind of make that connection like, oh, we got to look to the stars, or, these
Yeah.
border letters have something to do with stars because he's looking at the
Nice.
stars, which they did. And then once they figured out how to, use the alphabet to turn those symbols into letters, those letters spelled star names. And then in every single image, hidden in the image was either an animal or something like that that represented a
A
constellation.
constellation.
And
Nice.
that's where the hidden suns, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration came from
Yeah.
because Ben Brewis with the Hidden Sun, another really cool dude from the UK, beautiful book. He kind of had a bug in every single picture, but it was not so much the method itself was the same. It's just there was something in every picture you had to follow. With him, it was you took the bug and you actually overlaid it with the map in the front of the book,
Oh, nice.
and it would show kind of generally where you were supposed to look.
Yeah.
With me, the animal was representing a constellation that you had to look for in the sky. And once you did that, you were able to, once you figured out the pattern, you're like, oh, you have to draw a line from star to star, a letter, and you put them all together and it'll say something using the stars
Yeah.
written in the stars, literally.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of references in there. And then obviously the secret was always going to be um, the major center point of the puzzle, just because Lisa and I always felt that the reason why Secret has a lot of these people have like hundreds of followers, but the Secret and like Forest Fens Hunt, they have thousands, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that speaks to the fact of the style of the puzzle. I think their
Yeah.
style is very turnkey, um, where you shouldn't have to tell somebody. It shouldn't be like you're applying for a job when you buy a treasure hunt book. Like, in
Yeah.
order to have this, you're required to have 5 years of cipher breaking skills, and your team needs to be 8 people big, so you have
Yeah.
24 hours. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be this. Hey, we're selling you stress, and you might win $1,000 after
Afterwards.
500 hours of your time. That's not the idea. I think with the Secret, and what Byron Price did well is his style was turnkey. Here's
Yeah.
an image, here's a verse, combine them,
Yeah.
start looking stuff up, and in the process of looking stuff up, you're going to learn a lot about a lot of places. You're going to learn a lot of history. You're going to go down rabbit holes because I really love that subject, and you just become an expert of that subject. And that
Yeah.
is why you have thousands of people that are going to the Secret. And I'll tell you straight up, I mean, as long as that's happening in the hobby, that is what makes the armchair treasure hunt hobby great. The prizes are cool. Every one of my prizes is behind shirts and pants in my closet. They're not out on a display.
Yeah.
The novelty wears off. It really
Yeah.
does. So if anybody's watching, take it from me, and I've won a lot of them. The novelty wears off. Don't get so caught on the prize.
Yeah.
Don't get so caught up in I need to be the first person to win. Everybody needs to know that I was first and stuff like that, dude. Because I'm going to tell you right now, even if you're good,
Yeah.
it eats you up. It
Yeah.
just eats you up, and it is such an unrealistic thing to maintain. Especially the only way you can maintain it is if you don't have a job and you have somebody supporting you 24/7, and all you can do is
Yeah.
puzzle, because that is the only way you're going to be on top. And even then, when you're on top, nobody cares because it's a 2,000 person hobby. It's
Yeah.
not a humongous
Yeah.
hobby. Um, so I guess what I'm getting at with the whole style of the Secret is just turnkey approach. Forrest Fenn was turnkey approach. He had the same result.
Yeah.
People are so they're experts in Yellowstone and stuff like that, and that's what's eternal. That is what you pass on to your kids, knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Knowledge and
I
and
love
stuff
that.
like that. So yeah.
I had another question. Is there a direction you wish puzzles and treasure hunts would go in the future?
Yeah, I would. I would. I think the direction I would want to see. I'll speak more to puzzles. I think
Yeah.
because we're leaning towards the puzzle genre more, and I learned this more with a couple of things. So Rob Jenner had, I forget the gentleman's name on, but he was from the UK,
Mhm.
um, and he was more from the puzzle genre, and I would like to see it more go into a direction, and even the treasure hunts if they can. It's just to be in a direction that makes people become more collaborative. I think um, what happens in the treasure hunting hobby, especially if you're just a solo person getting into it, and I don't know if this is an American thing, but there's a fierce competitiveness, and what
Mhm.
happens is this person, they feel at such a disadvantage, um, that they try to form teams, and then this team gets this big, and I'm guilty of it too, and then you have this giant other team, and it just becomes like this super time consuming, super stressful thing, and then
Yeah.
next thing you know, it's this competitive thing. um, I just don't think that's healthy. I think Writing, I think the direction I'd like to see it going is with puzzles. I'd like the content to make somebody a better person.
Mm.
That's kind of like the reason why we chose the story that we did. We kind of wanted the people to look inward and kind
Yeah.
of better themselves and not be try not to be that kind of person. I would like them to have more knowledge when they walk out of it, and skills, just skills walking out of it. So even if there is a prize involved, if you don't win the prize, which yeah, it's going to happen more often than not. That's just the
Yeah.
reality of the hobby. You're still going to walk out a better person. So I guess it's a principles thing, more than a direction thing. If the direction if it's paved with good principles, I think we're gonna have a good hobby, whether it be treasure hunts or whether it's just puzzles. The thing is
Yeah.
with puzzles is once you take the prize away and nobody's fighting over everything and everybody could just solve for the same thing, because in the end of the day, it's not really the prize that you think you're seeking. You're just seeking that serotonin dump in
Yeah.
your brain that's like, I solved it. That's
Right.
really what it is.
Yeah.
Um, so when I look at it from the perspective of a writer and a perspective of a publisher that's trying to publish a writer and a hunter that wants that serotonin rush, it's just like write a puzzle where the publisher doesn't have to watch a sales plummet after
Yeah.
a prize is given out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm looking. I'd like to see a win-win for everybody. I guess that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. You
Yeah.
know. Um, and that's kind of why we're going in the directions I am right now. So I hope
Right.
that answers that person's
Absolutely.
questions. Yeah,
Yeah. So I had one last question, and I
yeah,
had phrased it, but now I should ask you if this is true. But I said you must have some very successful habits and strategies to avoid common pitfalls like confirmation bias or rabbit holes. But I guess I should ask, do you feel like you have some successful habits or strategies that you take into treasure hunting to avoid things like confirmation bias?
yeah. I think the biggest asset I have in avoiding confirmation bias is having a cutoff point in time that I spend on puzzles in general.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's it. It's time totally working on the puzzle, time working on a certain idea, um, to avoid confirmation bias. Now, this is it's so tough to not sound like hypocritical in this. It's good to have a second set of eyes, a third set
Yeah.
of eyes, and it's good to kind of take a back seat sometimes. I
Mm,
think to allow others' ideas and just observe,
mm,
observe, and that's a lot of what I'm doing right now. If I do work on hunts with anybody now, I get asked all the time, "Can work with us on this, work with us on that." It's just I'll go in there, and if I see something that I'm just like, yeah, this is probably that, and I'll do it. I'll solve a part and then I'll
yeah.
sit back. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of observe,
Yeah.
because number one, if you're going to be the loudest guy in a room, nobody wants that. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, if you're going to be the loudest guy in a room, that means you're putting the most effort into it. And that's probably because you're developing a confirmation bias and you're pushing that bias on other people. Um, so it's just taking a back seat, I guess, in a group. Take a back seat a little bit and just let the group breathe, and let them develop. And who cares? Let the ideas go, and just kind of
Yeah.
be there, and just kind of just sit there and just meditate. And you're hearing it all, but if you've been there for a while, you know when to just stick your hand up and grab one and be like,
Hey,
that's
I
a good
heard.
one.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
makes me put this.
yeah,
Yeah.
but don't be so injecting your own confirmation bias. I don't get along with people like that, or like that are very absolutist.
Yeah.
um
It's
I
tough.
like the
It's tough to
more
have a conversation. And
right, yeah,
yeah, and I think that's the funnest part of this whole hobby is like talking about puzzles or how things work or how things fit together. And it's tough to have a conversation with somebody that's certain.
yeah. And I deal with it too in the workplace too. And my brother's in the fire service as well. He's 3 years older than me, but he's an author as well.
Nice.
He writes books related to the fire service. He has two
Yeah.
published books. And we talk about this all the time, and it has to do with just kind of like leadership. And it's just like, you throw on a suit and you throw on this uniform and you're like this leader, in the, because I'm a higher rank in the fire service, and it's just people get this idea like it's like this author or totalitarian, blah, you know what I'm talking about, like
Yeah.
this dictatorship, and
Yeah.
I don't think that promotes growth with your people that are less ranked than you. I kind of like to make it very hive mind at work, because everybody comes from different backgrounds and everybody has something
Yeah.
to offer. So you just
Right.
become like this organism together.
Yeah.
And my crew at work is very good like that. Like we're very almost telepathic in like the most chaotic, horrific scenes I could even describe to you. And I'm
Wow.
not going to do that right now,
Yeah.
but even in that, you're just like a calm in a storm. And I think having that strategy is a successful strategy. So yeah, just kind of sitting back and allowing the team to kind of breathe and
Nice.
watch the ideas roll. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I mean, I think this has been amazing.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I think we covered a lot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So be patient with us. You know what I mean? With the sequel, we're working hard. We kind of just
Nice.
we get little things in here and there, but it will come out eventually. And
Yeah.
again, the only thing I can really say is just be out there, just kind of don't take the hobby too seriously. It's not a definition of your own intelligence. That's probably the last thing I can say with the podcast here.
Right.
Have fun. Have fun. Who cares?
Yeah.
You'll win some, you'll lose more. Happens to us all.
See why he's the great mentor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
All right,
Bye bye, everybody.
bye.
Mhm.